Let's convene the Bridges and Tunnels Committee meeting. Are there any public speakers? Mr. Bowden?
Now it comes down, to one yellow line. The one yellow line on the Whitestone Bridge is the whole ball game. I read your report. Your engineers read it wrong. New York State DOT is a major error. Your consultants are wrong. And you're getting all kinds of problems in all kinds of areas of the MTA because you're relying on bad information. It is very, very simple. If you cannot cross an area on a paved surface, the line is yellow. That is the entire ball game. There are no exceptions. The information that they added is in their heads, not in the book. You were here this morning when they introduced, and whoever introduced it used his personal comments, not what was on the board behind me. I have checked and rechecked as recently as this week with the people who are knowledgeable about the manual. I wrote everything down what I was going to do, and that New York State DOT was at fault, and so are the feds, are just as much at fault. And the answer I got back from a key traffic engineer person is, we're spending Christmas with our family, et cetera, which meant he read it, and he didn't dispute it. It went out to the best traffic engineers in the United States. No dispute. I request that you bring those consultants, put them at that table, your engineers, and put them at that table, and I will come down and show they are wrong. The major problem is New York State DOT is feeding bad information to Metro North and Long Island Railroad and you, and how do you stop it? This has been going on for years and years and years, and it all comes down to one single line on a Whitestone Bridge. If you can't cross, it's yellow. They got on a Henry Hudson Parkway underneath the George Washington Bridge. It's white next to a guardrail. How can it be? Your logic. Make up your mind. Drivers are stupid. Give them honest information. One single line is going to turn this place upside down. That's all it comes down to. And you can't fix one line? If you can't cross it, it's yellow. It's that simple. 25 years of my life comes down to one line. This is it, guys. If you can't fix that, how do you expect to get the right railroad cars or everything else? One single line can't be fixed?
Work plan, any changes? None? All right. Report on operations.
I'll start with my remarks.
Good.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. There are two highlights of this report that merit your attention. The first is that October 2017 collision rates decreased 36% from the same period in 2016. While customer safety presents an ongoing challenge that requires constant vigilance and ever-evolving strategies, B&T's collision mitigation efforts are having a cumulative impact that is improving performance. The second is that B&T achieved a 93.7% E-ZPass market rate share in October, which is the highest electronic toll collection usage in the country. In addition to providing a better customer service experience, E-ZPass transactions reduce costs and revenue risks. Finally, I would like to thank the dedicated TB&TA staff for their work during the season's first snowstorm. Because of their efforts, our tunnel and bridge facilities ran free and clear. At this point, I'd like to ask Dan DiCrescenzo to present the report on operations.
Thank you, President Fulton. To summarize, in October 2017, compared to the same month in 2016, total paid traffic increased by 4.2%, E-ZPass transactions increased by 13.1%, non-E-ZPass transactions decreased by 52.3%, passenger car traffic increased by 3.8%, and other traffic increased by 9.5%. Preliminary monthly traffic figures for November 2017 are 2.8% higher than in the same period of 2016. Preliminary traffic for the Wednesday through Sunday Thanksgiving weekend was 3.5% more than last year. An average of daily traffic on the Tuesday and the Wednesday of the Thanksgiving week was 960,000 vehicles, or approximately 100,000 vehicles more than on an average day. This ends the report on operations.
And I think the system owes Commissioner Zuckerman a debt of gratitude for watching very carefully and pointing out to all of us the issues with respect to the collisions. Commissioner Zuckerman.
I guess it's like my normally scheduled moment to speak, I guess. Well done, guys. Thank you very much, everyone, to you and your staff. You've seen this chart that I sent around to my colleagues and shared with you. It's the first month of any market decrease downward, and we appreciate, admire, and applaud the consistency by which you've been attacking this. President Fulton, thank you very much. I know you take it seriously. I know all of you do, Eric, as well, but your leadership has changed this trajectory. And now we got to keep it going in the right direction, and you obviously are living that. And you gave us a very detailed presentation last time about what you're doing tactically. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. At this point, I'll turn it over to Eric.
Thank you, President Fulton. The report on safety starts on page 30 and highlights our most important lagging and leading indicators as shown on top of bottom tables. The report represents 12-month rolling averages that compare year-over-year performance for key safety indicators. As President Fulton reported in the opening remarks, the total collision rate decreased in October by 36% from the same month last year to 6.28 collisions per million vehicles. This resulted in a decrease in customer collision rate for the most recent 12 months ending October 2017 to 8.20 from 8.56 rate that was reported last month. This was higher than the 7.28 rate for the same period ending October 2016. The 12-month average rate for injury collisions also decreased to 1.05 for October 2017 from 1.07 in September 2017 and is higher than the 0.92 rate for the 12 months ending October 2016. As per the committee's request, additional information has been provided for your review. The first chart illustrates the October decrease in overall collision rates. The following charts show the October customer safety performance improvements were widespread with significant collision rate decreases at the Bronx Whitestone, Throgs Neck, Verrazano Narrows bridges, as well as the UL Cary Tunnel. B&T has taken aggressive action to improve customer safety that contributed to October improvements in both total and injury collision rates. We will continue to closely monitor collision with injuries to identify any emerging trends as customers transition from a plaza to OR&T environment. The 12-month average employee lost time injury rate increased from 6.6 injuries per 200,000 work hours in September 2017 to 6.5 in October 2017, but is lower than the rate for 6.8 for the 12 months ending October 2016. We are continuously monitoring incidents to identify trends as we transition from toll plaza environment to OR&T, and as observed in the last 5 months, we have achieved an IOD reduction rate of approximately 48%, comparing to the same period of 2016. The 12-month contractor lost time injury rate decreased from 1.80 injuries per 200,000 work hours in September 2017 to 1.31 in October 2017, and is lower than the rate of 2.04 for the 12 months ending September of 2016. And this completes the safety report.
Any questions? I have one question for you, if I may. On the law enforcement component referred to on page 35, and it may be to you or to Inspector Crescenzo, to what extent do these numbers include tickets issued by the state police?
These are, these are just for bridges and tunnels, but we do have some statistics for state police. So these numbers would be increased with the state police numbers.
So this does not include the state police numbers?
Correct.
Do you have access to those numbers?
Yes.
Could we at some future date take a look at that and see if we can find out what the increase is when you add that number?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Easy Pass.
Yes, Doherty Abrams is sitting in for Mildred Chua, so he'll present Easy Pass performance and financial reports, as well as the 2018 budget and 2018 to 2021 financial plan.
Thank you. The October Easy Pass report begins on page 36. As President Fulton noted earlier, our overall Easy Pass market share was 93.7% in October. This is a record high and 7.4 percentage points above the year before. Clearly, open road tolling and related marketing efforts have been the driving force behind the increased market shares this year. And you can see further evidence of this in the October weekday shares for the Throgs Neck and Bronx Whitestone bridges. October was the first month both facilities operated within an ORT environment, and not coincidentally, it's also the first month both facilities saw average weekday market shares above 90%. Specific facility average weekday, peak hour, and average weekend statistics are in the book on pages 38 through 42. As we mentioned at last month's meeting, beginning with the January 2018 report, we'll be transitioning the Easy Pass performance report to focus on ORT performance, and we will be including statistics on revenue collections by facility. As we've also previously reported, overall collection trends, combining tolls and fees, are looking good so far this year. Unless there are any questions, I'll move on to the financial report.
Commissioner Pally.
Starting in January, your plan is to provide a financial report totally in relation to the amount of Easy Pass transactions that occur at each facility, and then the amount of mail
Tolls by mail, right?
payment by mail, and then a analysis of those that are paid and that are not paid by facility. Is that the intent?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Mr. Zuckerman?
I'm sorry if I stepped out and I missed this, and I apologize for my ringer, but did we talk about being kept whole from ORT, meaning what losses we saw on fees collected versus then the fines, and because this is obviously a huge topic we've had over many months, and I wonder if we're going to start collecting data to show us being kept whole or not.
Right, so just in starting with the January 2018 report, we're going to provide details on the collection rates and all.
Could you speak into the mic, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. So starting January 2018, we're going to be providing that in our reporting. But I can say this year so far, we are more than whole through August. There's a payment lag, right? So there's a 3 to 5 month payment lag with the violation fees until you catch up. Trends are looking very good in terms of making us whole on revenue. So collection trends are looking good.
Just so we know ahead of January what we're going to see, it's going to be a so you're going to be reporting in January as of when?
We are developing the report right now. So
All right, so you'll fine.
We're going to explain exactly what's going on month by month in terms of the revenue collection lab.
And will that be an ongoing analysis, or is it not? It's not a one-time, right?
It'll be a monthly analysis.
Good. Okay, great. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Who's next? Financial, right? Financial report.
Right. So the October financial report begins on page 42. We are comparing results against the mid-year forecast. Total revenue through October was $1.597 billion, which is just $310,000 below forecast. Traffic was 0.8% above forecast, but revenue gains from the additional volume were entirely offset by a 0.8% drop in the average toll due to higher EasyPass usage. Total year-to-date expenses were $407.8 million through October, which is $29.9 million, or 6.8% lower than forecast. Total support to mass transit was $961.8 million through October, which is $57.7 million, or 6.4% better than forecast. Unless there are any questions, I'll move on to the next item in the agenda, which is the 2018 budget and financial plan. The November financial plan appears on pages 58 through 68. The staff summary and supporting tables in the book report all the vital figures. We felt it would be helpful at today's meeting to briefly highlight the major changes between this November financial plan and the previous July financial plan. So first, there's the 2017 November forecast. The forecast includes $1.381 billion in projected baseline operating income, which is $2.1 million higher than what we projected at the mid-year forecast. This favorable change is a net of some pluses and one minus. I'll start with the minus. Toll revenue has been revised to $1.906 billion, which is $6.5 million lower than the mid-year forecast. Although we're projecting slightly higher traffic in this plan, 306.7 million crossings compared to 306.2 million in the mid-year forecast, we folded in the continued decline in the average toll that we've been seeing in the actuals over the past several months, and this results in a net plan-to-plan drop in revenue. On the positive side, total expenses for 2017 have been revised to $569.5 million, which is $8.5 million lower than the mid-year forecast. Labor expenses are forecast at $279.1 million, which is $7.6 million below the prior plan. This is mainly due to vacancies. Non-labor expenses are forecast at $290.4 million, which is $0.9 million lower than the mid-year forecast, primarily due to the revised insurance policy costs. Total support to mass transit has been increased to $1.039 billion, which is $19.1 million more than the mid-year forecast. The increased support is primarily due to the additional $2.1 million in operating income that I just outlined, plus a $5.4 million favorable adjustment to deductions from operating income based on re-estimates of one-shot projects that we're funding through our capitalized assets budget. And lastly, B&T debt service has been revised downward from $300 million in the mid-year forecast to $289 million in this November forecast, which is a reduction of $11 million. Moving on to the 2018 final proposed budget. A net total of $1.347 billion is projected for baseline operating income in 2018, which is $4.7 million below what we projected in the 2018 preliminary budget. Toll revenue has been reforecast to $1.923 billion, which is $14.7 million below the preliminary budget. The traffic forecast is essentially unchanged at 308.4 million crossings, but the plan-to-plan change in revenue is down entirely because we baselined out the lower average toll, which we've been seeing due to considerably higher EasyPass usage. Total operating expenses are budgeted at $620 million, including $302 million in labor costs and $318 million in non-labor costs. Total operating costs are $10 million lower than the preliminary budget, which partially offsets the plan-to-plan drop in revenue. These expense savings have been realized primarily through reevaluating and rebaselining our maintenance and other operating contract needs within our new ORT plaza-free operating environment. Although our plan-to-plan operating income has dropped a little, total support to mass transit has been increased to nearly $1.02 billion, which is $33.5 million greater than the preliminary budget due to revised B&T debt service projections. B&T debt service is now forecast at $278.4 million compared to $316.5 million in the preliminary budget. That's a favorable variance of $38.1 million. This concludes my report on the 2018 budget and financial plan.
Would you take a look at page 68 of the book? Unless I am misreading it, it looks like you have somewhere between an 8 and 10% increase in personnel at a time when you've gone to open road tolling. Am I misreading it, or is there an explanation?
Yes, so our funded headcount level is high. We're currently determining exactly what level it should be in an ORT environment. So we're still carrying a number of bridge and tunnel officers vacancies until we determine exactly the correct amount, because bridge and tunnel officers do more than just collect tolls.
This is an increase, not just doing maintenance. It's an increase of over 100 employees.
Between 2016 and 17.
Yeah.
Correct. It's because we're carrying the vacancies, we're assuming full staffing in 2017, but we know it's too high. We're going to be taking it down at the July mid-year. We just want to make sure we just want to make sure we take it down correctly and just once rather than do a piecemeal.
Well, let me take a look. You have in 2016 you had 81 employees according to this chart. You're proposing 92 for 2018, and you had 92 according to this in 2017. That's 11 more on just the administration side. If those are unfilled vacancies and you are just carrying them along, at what point do you confront reality?
On the administration side, those vacancies will hopefully be filled. Those 11 vacancies will hopefully be filled.
I don't understand. Commissioners?
Let me try it from a different line item, but I assume a similar question. If you look at the maintenance and operating contracts line of non-labor costs, which I assume is non-labor and therefore different than the head count, 16 to 17 were at a 38% increase in maintenance and other operating contracts. 17 to 18 we're showing a 17% increase in operating maintenance and other operating contracts. Can you just point us to where those increases are going, and maybe specify what the line item covers, and then maybe understand, because then you go back to basically flat. You go from 215 to 218, so you're flat, but you're jumping up 38%, then 17%. That's a pretty hefty jump in a 2-year period to a new level of spend.
So excuse me.
I do want to apologize. I realize you're sort of stepping in for your colleague, so apologies that we're jumping on you a little bit.
No, it's quite all right. I hope I'm able to answer it completely for you. But a big maintenance and other operating contracts covers the biggest components are major maintenance, and also the operation of the EasyPass Customer Service Center, which administers all of the back office costs for EasyPass and tolls by mail. The major maintenance program runs in coordination, basically supports the capital program. There are ups and downs in that. The big jump between 2017 and 2018 is we weren't fully ORT in 17. So going from partial, the back office costs for ORT to administer the tolls by mail to 100% fully operational in 18 is a big year-to-year change in costs.
So without putting words in your mouth, it sounds like you're trying to say that ORT, we may be neutral, maybe we'll be a little ahead with fines, but there's clearly a increased operating cost of having ORT.
There's a increase in year-to-year operating costs for sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for raising those issues because you saved me a question. I had flagged, particularly on the engineering line, that we had 46 more positions between 16 and 17. But my question, since it's already been asked by the chair, is related to the assumptions built in around, so I'm looking at page 64 of the book. You did touch on the increase to transit from B&T, support to mass transit. I'm a little confused by what was said, and maybe I'm misunderstanding. You had mentioned that there was an increase, I believe you said, in support to transit, with that amount in 2017 being $1,039,000,039. Did you say increase to $1,039,000,000?
The plan-to-plan change is better. So we're providing more support to mass transit in this November plan compared to July financial plan.
Because I'm looking at
July's
the...
not in there.
Okay.
He's saying the July plan versus November reforecast.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you. So my subsequent question is, in the outlying years, going to 2021, we're actually seeing a decrease in support to transit. And I'm still not clear why that is. And perhaps you've explained it, but I still am not clear.
No, I didn't talk at all about the out years, so you didn't misunderstand it.
Thank you for making me feel better.
You know, the short answer is we're growing. Our operating expenses are growing by inflation, which is around 2%, a little bit more than 2% each year, and revenue in the plan isn't. So the bottom line is diminishing. This plan does not.
So B&T within their baseline does not include the fare.
So within the MTA financial plan, which Bob will be presenting later, we have projected fare and toll increases in 2019 and 2021 that are at an MTA-wide level. So they're not included within B&T projected numbers. So you're gonna naturally see their expenses going up, but the extra revenue from those increases is not. So it's almost a natural progression where you're going to see a reduction in that specific indicator. The other thing that we should mention is also when you were talking about the increase in heads from 2016 to 2017, in the case of 2016 headcount, those are actual incumbents, whereas in 2017 it's approved positions. So that's also sort of a jump that just you'll see from time to time. So when you really want to compare 2016 to 2017, a better way to look at it would be to see the approved positions from 2016 to the approved positions in 2017. So those are just two comments I wanted to make based on the discussion that I was listening to.
But I'm confused now because I thought, wouldn't the open road tolling, you're saying your operating expenses are going up. Wasn't it supposed to reduce your operating expenses? I thought we were told it was going to reduce operating expenses. Is it more expensive to operate without the toll booths?
I'm not going to answer on the part of B&T in terms of the expenses, but there are what it is. The cost of an Easy Pass transaction is cheaper. Now, what of course it does is it does reduce the average toll because of the economics of of that in terms of the structure. The Easy Pass is a lower toll collection than a cash collection. the open road tolling is in fact increasing costs prior to what we had.
If I could add just a comment to that as well. We are in a transition period, and there's two elements. For sure, there are increased costs in the back office because the number of Easy Pass transactions are going up, so the back office costs will go up. We're looking at our field staff as we speak, and as was alluded to see where the right adjustment there is going to become, and that's where some of the cost reductions in an ORT environment as compared to a cash collection environment will be realized. So we're going through this transition period, and one of the questions that we're going to have to resolve within the agency is what's the right number of staff of the BTOs that work for Danny to make sure that we are at the same time as reducing costs, but also protecting the revenue, because there's an enforcement aspect of this as well that we want to make sure that when we adjust, we don't adjust too much, because we want to find that equilibrium and balance to be able to adjust. But it's certainly a question that we'll be looking at very closely as we move into the next year. The other thing I'd like to point to, and I believe this is correct, is that when you look at the actual reflects what it actually was at the end of the year because of our challenges filling headcount, whereas when you looked to the next year, 17, it was based on what the actual budget was. And so, part of the challenge is filling all of your positions through the hiring process.
Let me just make two comments, if I may. One, I can understand having a hedge until you have a definitive kind of plan. But what you seem to be doing is keeping the lines that are vacant on the books for the moment until you get to that point. By doing that, I understand where you're going, but at the same time, it's very hard, I think, for me at least, to figure out what it's costing and what the aggregate costs are that we're sustaining. At what point in time next year can you give us a more definitive set of numbers?
So that's the very issue we're working right now. It was a fast transitional year. For the most of the part, we were in a traditional operation where you needed to be able to satisfy lane coverage to be able to collect cash. Every several months, we were moving from a cash operation to an ORT operation. So if in fact we would have been successful in filling positions in 2016, the 2016 numbers, actual numbers, would probably have been closer to the 2017 numbers. What you're seeing in 2016 is the challenges of keeping headcount fully staffed. Notwithstanding that, though, as we went fully ORT at the end of September. So we're just now here. And one of the things we need to do is we need to keep our eye on that balance of our ability to run our operations and to have the enforcement efforts necessary to make sure that the behavioral modifications are in place to make sure people pay what they're supposed to pay.
Cedric, let me just tie a couple of things together that I'm getting a little lost on. One, I thought Dor said that the cost of those Easy Pass customer service folks are sitting in the line called maintenance and service contracts, which is explicitly non-labor, which is what has gone up so much. So I'm trying to understand, if it's a non-labor category, it's not a labor category definitionally. So I'm just trying to figure that out, which is why I think the chair is saying we probably need some sort of reconciliation of the sources and uses of ORT revenue and ORT expenses, because we're confused. The second thing I want to say is back to Ms. Vanderpool's question and what you said, Doug. I'm not sure the footing of the reduction in support to mass transit comes from what you were saying. It looks to me like on page 64 that the net is the increase each year in B&T debt service is the exact dollar amount, or near the exact dollar amount, which is where the reduction is coming to the support to mass transit.
Yeah, that's one element, but I just wanted to point out that one major item that is excluded when you look at the agency submission itself is it does not have those below-the-line items, but it also doesn't have the below-the-line budget reductions that we're anticipating. So those are two major disconnects, if you will. I'm not discounting the other elements that you're talking about, like debt service and expense growth.
Will you be in a position in January to give us a more complete report on this and with a greater actuality, reality? Is that too soon?
It's not. It'll be the beginning for us in many respects, though, as we move more fully into the ORT world. But as the months proceed after January, we'll be bringing additional clarity as we learn more.
I just want to be clear, though. Is it correct what Doris said, that the cost you're bearing for ORT is also in this non-payroll category, or are we just misunderstanding? Because you said it was a payroll issue, a staffing issue. He's saying it's which leads me to believe it's a third party doing it. So just
yeah. So it's all three. Okay. There are revenue implications. There are labor implications. There are non-labor implications. As far as the current budget plan goes, the non-labor costs are the year-to-year costs. A lot of that growth is due to ORT. On the labor side, we have not made the headcount reductions yet that we are eventually going to do. We will have all of this reconciled for the July financial plan because we will have enough experience by then to do that.
So can I just...
We won't get this hard information till July?
Well, we will be compiling it, of course. I mean, maybe we can do a preliminary
And why don't we
report.
do this? Let's have what you have in January and then update it to February, but let us know what's going on, because this is not the real world.
Okay. It's the budget world, which often isn't the real world, I agree. So, so maybe we will try to incorporate that into the ORT performance report.
Let me give you a heads up. The single best numbers guy in government is the chairman of the MTA. And he will know those numbers. As a former budget director and deputy mayor, he knows the numbers better than anyone. So I think he will want those numbers too.
Of course, okay.
So I'm just sorry, I'm still trying to understand. So are we saying right now, understanding that it may be reconciled differently in the future, the open tolling has raised labor costs, has raised outside contracting costs, and has reduced revenues?
It has not raised labor costs, and it hasn't reduced revenues. It has increased non-labor costs.
I thought you were saying it had reduced revenues because now you're getting more easy passes, which is lower than when people paid cash at the toll booths. I thought you just said...
Easy Pass market share, yes, has increased exponentially, and ORT is a big reason for that. So in that context, we are not bringing in as much revenue because more people have moved to Easy Pass and more people have signed up for Easy Pass.
Well, so is revenue going up or down? I'm not...
We are taking down revenue in this plan because of the higher Easy Pass usage.
Well, wait a minute. You're taking down individual rate or collective rate? Those are two different things.
The total for next year,
right?
Total toll revenue is $14 million less than what we had forecast at the mid-year.
In July, and that's because the individual rate is less.
That's because the average toll is lower than we expected because Easy Pass market share is higher than we expected.
Now, does that $14 million less number include the fines and penalties to be paid by the people who don't pay?
Yes, it does.
So even when you include that in there, to the extent you can, we all understand there's a lag, because people don't pay the day they get the bill. We understand that. So you're usually 3 months behind, give or take, 4 months?
Some people don't pay their bill for a year.
That's,
so,
I understand. But hopefully when they do pay, at that point, the fine is significantly greater than the amount they would have paid if they had paid on time. I mean, that's the only incentive we have other than DMV taking their license away now.
Right. Fines, as of today, the amount of fines, the violation fee revenue we bring in is at the same level or a little bit more than the actual tolls that we've billed.
suggesting that we ought to increase those fines?
I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm just saying that with fines, with fees, we are bringing in the amount of revenue that we expect based on what the mix of traffic is and based on what is being billed.
Right, so the only way to make that equal, because the more people who use Easy Pass, the less per transaction. We get that. So the only way to keep us whole is to increase the fines and penalties on those people who don't pay. That's the only way. That's the only way to do that.
And I'll bet you when you dig down, you'll find that most of them are truckers.
Just to address your point, what you're suggesting, I think, or where the conversation is going, is just fixing your point, your EasyPass market share to an expectation in time. I mean, you know, we're at 94%.
Right.
So at that percentage, we are expecting to bring in the amount of revenue that suggests. It's not, we're going to bring in less revenue than if we had an 85% market share.
Right.
So I think what you're, to raise the violation fee to make up for the difference between an 85% market share and a 94% market share is a different suggestion than what we've...
But my point is, that's the only, assuming the 94% market share stays constant, okay?
Right.
And that may depend on other things, one of which may be the fines and penalties if you don't pay, if you actually get people. But leaving that aside, the only way to make up the difference between what was the market share before ORT and what is the market share now before ORT is to do one of two things. Either to increase the amount paid by the people paying EasyPass, that's option one, or option two is to increase the amount paid by the non-EasyPass users so as to keep the numbers whole. Those are the only, or number three, as Commissioner Trottenberg says, decrease your revenues because decrease your expenses, because obviously we don't want to have a situation where we have less money in that context. Those are the only three options we have.
Commissioners, we understand, and we will be bringing you data in January so that we can have full conversation in all of these areas.
Can I ask one other question on the? Excuse me.
No, go ahead.
On the debt service issue, the debt service expense obviously goes up each year. Is that going up because we're issuing more debt, or because we're assuming interest rates are going up? Or both.
It's a combination. It's a combination of the expected long-term fixed interest rate, but predominantly it has to do with the debt service schedule as determined by our finance department. So it's their portion of the debt service, which is going up, as you know, in general because of the schedule of debt, and then to a lesser degree, the long-term debt rate is higher than it has been.
Right. And that debt rate applies not just to MTA debt, but also to B&T debt.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry, I still have a math question here. So I'm looking at the net operating income number. I'm on page 64, which I guess is taking in the total toll revenue and whatever total expenses before. I mean, that number is essentially pretty stable, going down slightly. And that's not accounting for a toll increase that would happen. When would it happen?
2019 and 2021.
So for those years before the toll increase, the support to mass transit is still going down. So
it's the debt.
Debt service.
Yeah.
mean, I kind of want to go back and pull the transcript, because I remember when it predates you, Cedric, when we talked about doing this. I seem to remember at the time there were questions about revenue and questions about whether it would have any implications for, contributions to the transit system. And I think the answers at that time were very reassuring.
We spent a lot of time on
Yeah.
the top line on revenue. We spent no time on the bottom line, the expense.
You have to understand one fact.
Yeah.
When they were putting together these numbers, they were functioning on the basis of data relating to the Henry Hudson Bridge, which was passenger cars, no trucks. And when it was decided to move to open road tolling for the other bridges where you had trucks, everybody anticipated there would be a time period during which that could be phased in, because the truckers were more likely to be toll evaders than the passenger cars, and more difficult to track down. We may be hitting that as a factor, but it seems to me we need to get these numbers in a more reasonable fashion before we come up with that awful discussion early next year about what happens to tolls and fares and the like. Commissioner?
And an addendum to the chair's suggestion is to really get an updated assessment of the aggregate capital costs, because we did ask this question several months ago and we were told that the aggregate capital costs of ORT were just over $500 million, I think 515. And if we could get an aggregate analysis of the operating costs ongoing for this, I think it would be very helpful.
It's going to require a much more detailed analysis when we decide what we're going to do in 2019. That's a much more detailed analysis.
Yeah.
Because by then, we'll have this year. And say
the report on the capital program begins on page 70. Overall, B&T has already exceeded its annual commitment plan, with a total commitments achieved year to date at 102% of our annual plan of $527.7 million. We've also exceeded our annual completion goal of $527.8 million, with the recent early completion of the $18.6 million reconstruction of the Brooklyn Plaza at the Hugh L. Carey Tunnel, bringing our annual completions to approximately 103% of our annual goal. Unless there are any questions, that completes my report.
Questions? Pardon me? Are you finished?
Now we have procurement starting on page 89. There are no non-competitive procurements or ratifications. There are 3 competitive procurements this month in the amount of $95.1 million. There's an award of a competitively solicited design-build contract for the installation of facility-wide monitoring and detection systems, including security and fire detection, at both the Bronx Whitestone Bridge and Robert F. Kennedy Bridge facilities in a negotiated amount of $71,797,700. There's an award of a competitively solicited design-build contract for main cable and suspender rope testing and inspection at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge in the negotiated amount of $17,250,000. There's a public work modification at the Marine Parkway Gil Hodges Memorial Bridge for the replacement of the electrical riser cables and increases to unit price quantities, primarily associated with steel repairs, in the negotiated amount of $6,031,460. Unless there are any questions, these procurements are described in detail in the enclosed staff summaries.
Trottenberg?
Just a question on the Hellman Electric procurement. So in the staff summary, it mentions towers and some other work. Is this Are these towers related to the gateway towers that were discussed many months ago? Is this
No, that's the bridge tower.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with those gateway
I
towers?
don't think so. Let me just take a look at it. No.
Just a sense, these were two things. One, for both bridges, these procurements were part of our 15 and 19 capital plan?
Right.
Yes. Yes?
Yes.
And can you just maybe, since that was, I mean, I see the line items in the capital plan, but just what's changed about the environment for the bridges that would make the need for these services necessary now in 2017? If these are not related to the issues that of a earlier crossing, what are these things doing that we need them now?
So the main cable testing and suspended rope testing project at the Verrazano is part of an ongoing program to monitor and plan for the long-term capital needs of our suspension bridge elements, including the most critical of which is the main cable and the suspender ropes that basically carry, are the primary load carrying elements of the suspended spans. So obviously in the case of the Verrazano, which is our largest suspension facility, we need to continue to invest in doing our due diligence on inspecting and ensuring that the health and the strength of those critical elements is known, and that we have a program in place to plan for any necessary capital intervention. So this is really very similar to what work we've done at other bridges, notably the Whitestone Bridge. It's part of an ongoing program of just knowing the true condition of the main cable and the suspender ropes, which are critical elements for our suspension bridges. The second issue is the electronic security and detection systems. This is part of our ongoing security strategy, which is sort of, to monitor these sensitive areas of our bridges, notably the bridge towers and the anchorages are the main elements. So it's part of a program that we have at all our facilities.
Contrary-minded, abstentions, done. The diversity report is in the book. We are running awfully late. Would you forego the questioning on this and then pursue it some other time or offline? Or I will take a motion to adjourn. Second, done. Thank you.